September 21st, 1989. It's evening on the South Carolina coast, and one of the most powerful hurricanes in American history is 5 hours from landfall.
Forecasters are now describing Hurricane Hugo as extremely dangerous, and as the storm turned toward the islands of the eastern Caribbean tonight.
There is a mandatory evacuation in effect. All residents are urged to leave the island.
We've given the order to all local law enforcement officials, highway patrol officers, and National Guard military police. We will arrest anyone who is asked to leave an area of emergency and they refuse to do so.
Meteorologists have been watching Hugo for almost 2 weeks, across the Atlantic, through the Caribbean, over Puerto Rico.
Once again, we would remind you that this is the most powerful hurricane of this century that's ever come into the South Carolina coast. It's stronger than Hurricane Hazel of 1954. It's stronger than Hurricane Gracie was in 1959.
250,000 people have already left the coast.
Yo, where are you taking everything?
Here is what most people don't know about Hurricane Hugo. The ocean it pushed ashore that night rose higher than any storm tide ever measured on the east coast of the United States.
In the center of Hurricane Hugo, there were just too many emergencies. This is the worst hurricane in at least 30 years.
And the most dangerous building in South Carolina wasn't a beach house on the waterfront. It was a government-certified hurricane shelter with 1,100 people inside.
Why there was no help out here? Why was there no water, batteries, food, shelter? There's no communication, there's no water, there's sewage in the house. This is horrible.
This is the story of the storm that broke every rule. Hugo began the way most Atlantic monsters do, as a ripple of wind off the coast of Africa. That was September 9th. By the time it reached the Caribbean a week later, it had grown into one of the most violent hurricanes the region had ever faced. It crossed Guadeloupe around 1 a.m. on September 17th, with winds near 140 miles per hour. The next morning, its eye passed directly over the island of St. Croix. 6 hours later, it struck the east coast of Puerto Rico. In the harbor at Culebra, an anemometer on a ship called the Nightcap recorded a gust of 170 miles per hour. And then Hugo turned northwest, toward the mainland of the United States. South Carolina took the warning seriously. More than 250,000 people evacuated the coast. In Charleston, homeowners boarded up windows on streets that had stood since before the American Revolution and drove inland. And 30 miles up the coast, in the small shrimping town of McClellanville, people did exactly what the emergency plan told them to do. They went to Lincoln High School. A state evacuation study had certified the school as a primary hurricane shelter, listed as dry through a Category 4 storm, on ground the maps put well above the reach of any surge. More than 1,100 people packed into its classrooms and cafeteria. Among them, a paramedic named George Metz, assigned to the shelter for the night, who had left his own wife and 4-year-old daughter in safety to be there. By the morning of September 21st, there was even a reason for hope. Hugo had weakened, a Category 2, survivable, manageable. The ocean had other plans.
But the wind and the waves crashing in already are a signal Hugo may be bringing more than those here can outlast. Charleston's mayor has been begging people to forego a fight with Hugo.
On its final approach to the United States, Hugo crosses the Gulf Stream, a river of warm water running up the Atlantic coast, and pure fuel for a hurricane. Storms that touch it feed. Hugo feeds all day. Through the afternoon of September 21st, the pressure falls and the winds climb back past 100, then past 120, then past 130 miles per hour. By nightfall, the storm that had been dying that morning is a Category 4 again, every bit as violent as the one that leveled St. Croix. There will be no last-minute weakening, no merciful wobble out to sea. The strongest storm to strike the United States in 20 years is aimed at Charleston. And it is not just strengthening, it is speeding up.
Extremely severe, Category 4, biggest hurricane the city's had in a century, maybe in its history.
A typical hurricane crawls toward land and gives the coast time to brace. Hugo is charging at it, and a storm this fast carries its violence much further than any coastline. At 6 p.m. in McClellanville, George Metz and his partner Tim Lockridge move their ambulance to Lincoln High School and set up an aid station in the arts and crafts room. Around 8 p.m., a family asks them to go back out. An elderly man, unable to walk, is still at home a few blocks away. Together, the two medics drive into the rising wind, load the man, his wheelchair, and his wife into the unit, and bring them back to the shelter, soaked through. The squalls are no longer occasional. Along the coast, the last evacuation routes empty out. The rain bands arrive. Then,